Good morning, everybody. Well, good morning from New York. I'm pretty impressed with the global representation. I'm really excited to speak to you today, and thank you very much for your time. I look forward to your questions at the end. So if you don't mind going ahead, here we go. So what I'm here to speak to you today is about setting yourself up for success when you're out to explore in the blockchain space. It's a very complicated, nuanced environment. How to use it and apply it correctly can be maybe not obvious until you start to get into it a little bit deeper. It's definitely a steep learning curve with lots to understand and to consider. The worst thing that can happen to anybody that wants to explore into a blockchain, I believe, is to only have enough powder to try one time. And what we want to try to encourage are strategies that people could use to give you leverage in your experimentation to find something that is going to be significantly more valuable to you and your users. And that's what I would like to speak through today. So next slide, please. I'm going to start with the problem statement. And roughly speaking, it's just way too expensive to experiment in blockchain today. There's a tremendous amount of interest and hype, and people have spent a lot of time looking into it. But when it comes time to sit down and do something, it can be prohibitively expensive. Microsoft has a really nice post where they talk about their research showing about 8 to 12 weeks and up to $300,000. My experience is that this is consistently on the low side. More often than not, I see things that are in the range of 6 months to a year and with a much higher price tag. Next slide, please. And a big part of the problem with the expense is because of just how much you have to do to get one of these blockchains off the ground. So, again, Microsoft pointed out calling this the scaffolding. So how do you build all the infrastructure that you need to get started? Next slide, please. And all those different types of components require different types of skills. This is where the cost really starts to go up. You need a set of traditional skills, new skills, niche skills. You've got kind of everything across the board. And in the end, this is what causes a lot of the bloat in the experimentation. And now, note, the last two slides, all I've spoken about is getting something built and running. I haven't spoken at all about the application or the value to the user or the, any sort of user feedback or research. I mean, this is really just a tax on your idea. All you wanted to do is test your idea with your users or maybe learn a little bit more about how these systems work. But you've spent the preponderance of your time on building infrastructure, things that just people won't even see or care about when you launch your idea. So next slide, please. And this is kind of the reaction that I see a lot of people get because where scope gets cut almost always is at the functional layer of the application. Like, all you did was move some marbles around. All you did was transfer a token from one person to the other. Like, that doesn't really feel all that innovative. I don't really know what the value of this is. And people will invariably then fall into the weeds of discussing all the public and private key stuff and the data structures and the consensus mechanisms. And your user unequivocally will not care about that. The user cares about the value of the application. How is their business getting better? How are their interactions with your business improving? So, this is a pretty common pattern that I've seen. And this is the face that we want to make sure that nobody ever experiences when they get into it. Now, you can get into it and say, there just isn't enough value here. That's a fine outcome. But you never want to see people disappointed with your experiments because it just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Next slide, please. And the other thing that I think is a little bit subtle and confusing for most people is it doesn't matter if you are using an open source, normal programming language and an open source ledger. Nobody, with the exception of digital asset, has invested in building an abstraction layer between the blockchain and your application. So that means your application, it doesn't matter if you wrote it in Go or Kotlin and you're running it on an open source ledger, it is baked into that ledger. So if you get to the end of your experimentation and for whatever reason blockchain A didn't work for you, and there's lots of reasons why it wouldn't, people are making trade-offs and design decisions all the time, and you want to try B, if you've chosen the ledger first and you built an application for that ledger using whatever its native language is or whatever its native application framework is, you're stuck. You have to start from scratch somewhere else. And that's something that people don't anticipate because often open source to them or even the basic development experience for them, they are accustomed to portability and the ability to test different types of infrastructure with minimum application changes or none at all. And this, until digital asset, does not exist in the blockchain ecosystem. Now, I'll explain a little bit more about that in a bit, so I know I'm going to glance over that. Next slide, please. And when that happens, you've just spent 3 to 6 months, you've just spent $300,000+ on an experiment. Imagine going back to your stakeholders and saying, actually, I need at least the same budget because I want to tweak this application, but on a different ledger. And more often than not, it just doesn't go anywhere from that situation. Or people double down under the sunk cost fallacy and they keep going forward with the decision that they started with. And make no mistake, a lot of these blockchains actually employ that strategy. Their goal is to get you to pick them first and to get stuck. And it's to their advantage, not to yours. So, again, as digital asset, we try to position ourselves as advocates for approaching the space intelligently and giving leverage to the developer and the user. All right, next slide. So, I wouldn't present a problem if I didn't have a solution for you, of course. So, next one. So the solution is actually really quite straightforward. You can approach the blockchain space by picking Daml first. Daml is not at the ledger layer, it's at the application layer. And Daml is a really large umbrella term for lots of things that we produce. But first and foremost, it's a programming language and a framework that allows businesses to build applications that collaborate. And this to us is really kind of the key value of these blockchains, is that you get to build applications that can selectively share state with each other. It's, an equivalent would be, moving from mainframes and messaging to moving to something like AWS and shared infrastructure, or moving from Word documents and sending them through emails in a versioned way, instead moving to something like Google Docs. What you can do with Daml and blockchains is you can start to build applications that natively can interact and collaborate with each other. That's where we see the real value in this ecosystem. And we always start from that perspective first, the value to the user, the change of the application, and then you can pick the infrastructure that makes sense based on your use case. Next slide, please. So I want to spend just a quick moment trying to give you a couple analogies. These are crude, high-level analogies, but still I think they're important. If you look at the creation of the computer industry, what was a really key innovation there was Microsoft Windows. Now, everybody knows this, right? But I just want to point out why this is a pattern that has become tried and true in the technology space. Developers built applications for Windows, and computer manufacturers made sure that it supported Windows. And in that way, the developers learned one ecosystem, and they got all of the technologies. And at the technology layer, it allowed the technology vendors to compete exclusively at their layer, right? A lot of these companies didn't go into the market and say, I want to build a better financial application. They just said, I want to build a faster, better computer. And having this common layer in the middle made any application that worked with that common layer work in the technology. So it's a virtuous circle. It helps all sides. It helps the developers. It helps the users. They have a common interface. It helps the vendors in the space because it gives them focus and purpose, and they compete at the right layer. And we saw the same thing happen with databases in Java. Something people don't talk a lot about is JDBC, and people are aware of SQL and its value, but maybe not in this same context. So when you write a Java application, you're not building it for the database per se, you're building it for JDBC, and JDBC is the interface into the underlying database. And it did the exact same thing that the Microsoft operating system did for computers. There are hundreds of database vendors, and if they support a JDBC driver, your Java application can work against that database with minimal or no changes, right? So this portability story, this abstraction out from this very quickly evolving, growing, and improving infrastructural layer is a critical component to the success of these technology markets. And Daml is that same abstraction and language that you have into these growing enterprise blockchain ecosystems. So if you want to pick Daml and build an application in Daml, you will have full portability across any ledger that supports the Daml ledger drivers. And in the future, you will also have perfect interoperability across anyone else using Daml and the Daml ledger drivers, completely independent of the infrastructure that they've chosen. Next slide. So, what I want to point out is that there's really nothing positioned like Daml in the blockchain space today. And I've got a couple more analogies because I think it helps people understand a little bit more how we're positioned. The web needed a really great language for building websites, JavaScript. Some people love it and hate it, but unequivocally it had its position and it helped make the web what it is today. Connected applications that collaborate, need a language like Daml to make that possible. Lots of benefits there, which we can get into another time. But primarily, Daml is the language if you want to build this type of application. Databases needed this interface like SQL and JDBC. Blockchains need the Daml ledger drivers. It does the same job. It does the same purpose. It gives you all the value that I discussed in the previous slide. And we are bringing to market something that we've been working on for a long time, and it's a critical component of what we're building, which is a protocol. The web needed HTTP to share data across different entities in the system. Connected applications need the Daml Canton protocol to share state, again, across any type of infrastructure that's running Daml and the Daml ledger driver. Next step. All right, next slide, please. And if that wasn't enough, we've also built a SaaS service that allows you to deploy your Daml application in seconds. So if you go back to your experimentation lifecycle and you're thinking about it, this allows you to pick up Daml, learn it in a couple days, build your first application in a couple days, and deploy it in seconds without having to spend one moment building any infrastructure into your solution in your application. That means you can engage your stakeholders right away, you can have something in production right away, while you experiment, learn, test, explore what type of permanent long-term blockchain infrastructure you want. So we really cover the full life cycle. Education, training, learning, open source, language, top to bottom, instantaneous deployment, production environment, and Project Dabble, and then a suite of enterprise blockchains that you can choose from for your target infrastructure if that's the direction that you want to go down. Next slide. The benefits will be super quick. We can go through them really quick. I've touched on a bunch of them. Next slide. It allows you to do rapid innovation. In that same 3 to 6 months, you may have built 10 examples. It really is that fast. I mean, Daml applications are consistently 10% the code of their alternatives. Plus, we have all this tooling that makes you more productive. We give you UIs that come out of the box, all sorts of frameworks and like integration components, et cetera, et cetera. So we give you tons of tooling to make you highly productive out of the box. Next slide. Once you launch them into Project Dabble, they are in production. Those are real applications. They are authenticated top to bottom, login flows, HADR, backup, resiliency, auto-scaling, everything that you need from an application. So once you've deployed that app, it may have only taken you a couple days to get it up and running. You can instantly start sharing a live URL with anyone that wants to interact with it, and they can start to interact live with a real application. Give feedback within days of when you started to write some code, as opposed to having to wait 6 months and putting the majority of your effort into something that the user will never even see or interact with. Next slide. And one of these really nice implicit benefits of this is that as a company or as a developer, you've taken a focused approach. You've spent the entirety of your time thinking about the application or your users. You've spent zero time thinking about how to run the infrastructure. You get lots of learning from that. You really, and again, where it matters, at the user level. Next slide. And like I started with, our primary goal in all of this is to give you, the user, the customer, and your users leverage and optionality. So, the value of something like portability is you may choose blockchain A to start with, but for whatever reason, blockchain A continues down design path A, and it doesn't work for the way that your application is evolving, and you want to move to blockchain B. If you don't have portability, in that scenario, you not only have to start from scratch if you have to go to B, but you have to somehow migrate all that data and all those users over there. It can be extremely difficult, and that can be really limiting to what you're capable of doing in your system. And we see this happen like in a lot of the public blockchains. You see really aggressive, nasty forking, lots of arguing with everybody, and this will happen for anybody that gets locked into their blockchain and wants to try to take it in a different direction. And keep in mind, you're not building this single controller of an entire network type thing. Some of your stakeholders will have different needs as they move forward, but they still want to interact with you. So how do you start to build this network of networks where people have sovereignty over the decision-making of the infrastructure that they want, while still having the connectivity to all the other users in the network? That to us is the sweet spot, and that's what we're trying to solve for. Next slide. And the next steps are really simple. So go forward. Daml is open source under the Apache 2 license. So everything that you need to build an application top to bottom is free and open source today. You can also go to daml.com and learn, and we have lots of online tutorials, online IDEs, lots of tools to get you started. We are consistently told that our documentation is fantastic. We've made huge investments in that over time. Next slide. Anything that you build in Daml, you can deploy to Dabble. Again, you can start for free there. There's some high threshold whereby we start to ask people to pay, but up until that point, it's free and clear for you to experiment and play around. Next slide. And when you get there, you'll see that you will have been like massively successful in a very short period of time, and you will invariably want to know more. And again, our job is to position ourselves to help you find and make the right decisions within the space. We have every type of service that you might need or want to help you take the next step in your journey, think about how to go forward. We do everything from code review to bootstrapping to connecting you to our Daml certified partners who could build really big production applications for you. Daml is currently going to become the language of the entire nation of Australia's stock market. So if you look at some of the projects that we're working on, they are huge, they are massive, and they're going to be around for a long time to come. So we have not just experimentation and POC experience, but we have years of enterprise build at national regulated infrastructure experience. So just to make it really clear, that is a Daml application will run every stock in Australia. It'll run on a VMware blockchain. So there's lots that we can talk to everybody about and help them in their journey. But remember to try to start with something that gives you leverage at the out point. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. I think I did okay for time.
You did
there should be some room for Q&A.
Yes, you did excellent. And I would say, first of all, we are bringing now the poll results that I would like you to comment. And also, we do have a great number of questions already coming in. Actually, I'm afraid we won't make it. We will not make it in the 5 minutes available. So the question that is what is your experience with blockchain so far? And 50% have no experience. And the next is POC complete, but no onward production plans. So it looks like that there is a sort of a halt in the execution of blockchain projects. What would be your comment looking at the results?
I think that this is about what I anticipated when I set out to do this deck. The two things, the none, I mean, securing this type of budget for an experiment where you can't yet articulate the value to the company can be very difficult to do. And so again, that's why we thought that if we could build this whole Daml to Dabble experience, someone in their weekend might be able to build an example and show it to someone in their internal organization and say, doesn't this look compelling? Do you want to do more? And might be able to get a smaller budget to move forward. Yeah. So we wanted to make the space significantly more approachable. I think the abandoned but failed thing, I actually expected that to be a little bit higher of the none proportion, just based on what I've seen and I know of in the space. Again, very much like stuck in the weeds and not necessarily able to articulate why a blockchain makes something better for the use case that they're going after. And so that I expected that number to be a little bit higher. But it's great to see these other two numbers at the end here about, well, I guess just the one at the end about moving to production, POC, but no onward production plans. Those two in the middle, I guess, are kind of the same in a certain sense. But that last one is good to see. It's a good number.
Yeah. Actually, perhaps, it also depends on how the success of these projects is measured, because I think that by virtue of at least running and implementing and testing, that's already a big, I would say, accomplishment. So people start getting acquainted. Okay, now let's get into the question.
Sure.
There's many here. So let's see. Actually, I think we have space for one or two. If you can
Sure.
keep. The first one here is, how does Daml relate to smart contracts?
Yeah, so Daml is a language for building smart contracts. So, you can think of it as an alternative to chain code for Fabric, or an alternative to the stripped down Kotlin variant in Corda, or an alternative to Solidity for Ethereum or the enterprise Ethereum. options. The difference is all three of those languages are baked into the ledger. So if you want to build an application for one of those systems, the semantics of the ledger seep deep into your application and you're locked in. Daml is both the language and the abstraction layer. So if you write a Daml application, you can run it against a SQL database, like you would any normal programming language. And there are lots of good reasons why one would do that. And then that same application, line for line, exactly the same code, you could run against something like VMware Blockchain, or you can run it against something like we've got all sorts of different enterprise blockchains that we're rolling out, so you can go to the website and get the full list. But I think that's really important. It brings you optionality. You've built something, you can run it in the right infrastructure for what you need. But it is a smart contract language plus all sorts of other tooling and framework.
Okay, so I would say it's time for one more question here. Let me pick this one here. It's coming from Dwi. Hi, Eric. May I know the procedure from Daml to get demo apps before we develop the right blockchain system?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to daml.com, and the SDK distribution, so the development kit is there, and it's available for anybody to download. There are also online development environments for you to experiment with it. It's in Git. It's free and open source under an Apache 2 license. Daml.com is something that you can go to, and you can just use it right now for free. Same thing with projectdabble.com. You can log in, create an account. Everything is free. We won't even ask for a credit card for you to get started. So you can experiment with both things completely free and clear, completely self-service, and reach out to us at any time as you get a little bit further into the process and need a hand, need a help, and might be willing to pay for some enterprise services or enterprise tooling. So please feel free to get started anytime.
Thank you very much. Okay. There's people asking how they can get in contact with you. So definitely, we are happy to set up the contact for you with Eric. And the reason why also we are insisting on you to, register on the LinkedIn group is because that is the best place to continue the conversation. And also there's plenty of questions that are there. Unfortunately, they are not answered. But I would appreciate, Eric, if you and your team, could spend time. And first of all, those who ask questions and they have not been answered, if you can please post those same questions on the LinkedIn group, and we will make sure that Eric and his team will answer those questions so that we have another environment. Of course, those questions that can be answered, that would be great to keep the momentum and also allowing you to set a direct connection with Eric and Daml to eventually, find business opportunities together. That is actually what we are happy to happen. So thank you, Eric, for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Okay.